This is CBC Here and Now.
Labrador is always in my heart and never far from mine.
MP Yvonne Jones takes temporary leave. Her message to her constituents in Labrador.
The Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador's 48th version of the Christmas Craft Fair is underway here at the Jack Byrne Arena in Torbay. We'll have all the details coming up.
You're a jokester. I want you to find 3 or 4 other men, and I want you in 2 weeks to do a comedy show for the men because they need the morale boosted.
And in half an hour, comedy troops among the fighting troops. A St. John's play looks at the first comedy troupe during the First World War. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We begin in Happy Valley Goose Bay tonight, where protesters weren't impressed with the Justice Minister. John Hogan was in town today addressing concerns about the ever-growing transient and homeless population. And while he didn't commit to a particular plan, the local shelter is offering its perspective. The CBC's Heidi Adder has more.
It wasn't a warm welcome for Minister John Hogan. About 40 people gathered outside the town hall at lunchtime today. They want to see issues surrounding the transient and homeless population addressed now.
We need action.
According to organizers, the minister was invited to this rally, but Perry Trimper says he had a previously scheduled meeting. So instead, questions about enforcement and public safety were punted to the MHA.
But here's the problem, it's gone like this. The ask is at this point, the problem is escalated. We've seen numbers like we've never experienced
because
before.
there's nothing being done. There's no one being charged. They're coming up for a free-for-all.
Actually, the charges are through the roof.
The rally was very different than the one held on Friday. About half the number of people, but twice the frustration.
We're out of sight and we're out of mind.
Minister Hogan came to town to meet with community members and local businesses. The number of people camping in town trails has ballooned to 80, and many are concerned about safety. He also stopped by CBC for a one-on-one interview.
And that's what we're going to try to work on to fix in the short term. I don't want anyone in the community to be scared. We talk about Newfoundland and Labrador and Canada. Best country in the world to live in, best province in Canada to live in. When you hear stories like that, it doesn't sit well, and we're going to do our best to address it as soon as we can.
Hogan reiterated his previous comments about this being a complex issue involving Indigenous people, but the group behind the local shelter, the Housing Hub, does have some short-term solutions in mind.
I do think that there probably is a need for increased RCMP presence. I think we need to target what that looks like, not necessarily for criminalizing behavior. But I do think that one thing that worked well in the past was the Indigenous liaison position. I think that was helpful, definitely for Indigenous groups, but also I think for the public too. Indigenous people are part of this community and they're a large part of the population, not just the transient population, not just people at the shelter, but Indigenous people overall. And I think that needs to be recognized, and that the history of trauma, a lot of those pieces really needs to be embedded in a lot of the programs.
Kinney says there needs to be more understanding of addictions and why people are living on the trails.
People have a whole variety of life experiences and things they've been through. Levels of trauma. I mean, there's a reason for people to have addictions issues. It's not something that people just choose.
Some at today's rally say it's not about criminalizing addictions, but enforcing laws.
It's sad that our young ones are growing up and this is normal, and this is not right.
A small group of people who are part of the transient population also stopped by today's rally in an effort to bridge the gap, but they and the community were left with no clear solutions and no word yet on how the ongoing issue might be addressed. Heidi Adder, CBC News, Happy Valley, Goose Bay.
Yvonne Jones is taking a leave of absence as the Liberal Member of Parliament for Labrador. 12 years after first beating breast cancer, Jones says she's now fighting the disease once again. The CBC's Heather Gillis reports.
In September, I was diagnosed with a reoccurrence of breast cancer.
In a video posted online, Yvonne Jones says she's pressing pause on politics. The Liberal MP for Labrador says her cancer is back, found and diagnosed early through routine mammography.
My prognosis is very good.
Jones has been a powerful voice for Labrador and a political heavyweight over the last 3 decades. And it's not the first time she's had to step back to deal with cancer.
I am stepping back from my role as the leader of the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Jones was first diagnosed with breast cancer at 42. That was 12 years ago, back in 2010. Treatment weakened her immune system and kept her from leading the Liberal Party in the 2011 general election. Throughout her whole career, the good times and the bad, Jones has been a fighter.
Those of you who know me know I am a fighter.
They know at the end of the day I'm going to fight hard for them, but determination and never giving up a fight.
And now the fighter has one more battle to wage.
I know that I can fight this, and with treatment and surgery, I will do fine at the end.
It was devastating news.
This time around, Jones says she knows what to expect.
But with that also comes a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety.
Jones says in her time off, she'll take care of herself so she can return to work as soon as possible to take care of her constituents. She also says this time a hybrid parliament, which didn't exist a decade ago, will help in her journey to good health.
I'm not going anywhere yet. This is a bump in the road. I've had many challenges in my life and in my political career, and I have every intention of running in the next election. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me.
Jones says her staff will be there for her constituents during her absence. In the meantime, Jones is stressing that screening and early detection saves lives. She's also encouraging women to get regular breast and cervical cancer screening. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's. Well, some cancer patients in Newfoundland and Labrador will have to travel to Ontario for treatment. One of the radiation suites at the Dr. H. Bliss Murphy Cancer Centre was forced to close due to a shortage of radiation therapists. According to the head of NAPE, a quarter of cancer patients may have to be sent away for treatment. Jerry Earle says about 30% of the province's radiation therapists resigned this year. Some of those resignations were due to better wages elsewhere in Canada. Some healthcare workers will soon be offered the same perks as doctors, nurses, and LPNs. Today's announcement applies to CUPE and allied health professionals working in understaffed areas. Licensing fees will be paid for some retired people who return to work. Those who return or commit to stay will get a retention bonus. In areas where it's difficult to recruit and keep workers, double overtime will be paid. The head of allied health professionals says it's a good start, but that many areas of the healthcare system are either in a crisis or nearing one.
Right now we're facing a 40%, maybe even a little higher, 40% vacancy rate in clinical psychology. It's impacting the mental health program, it's impacting pediatrics. It's just, at one point last year we were losing a psychologist a week. So anything that helps us retain the group that we currently have and maybe even bring some back would be really, really positive for us. We certainly want to stop the bleed.
Temperatures a bit warmer out there today compared to yesterday, sitting in the single digits though, about 6 degrees in St. John's. Same thing for Badger, 8 in Stephenville today, and those temperatures up across Labrador still along the coast below zero, hovering around the 0 degree mark in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. We've got an area of low pressure in Labrador, but if we zoom out, we've got a couple of weather systems that are coming up. First of all, tropical storm Nicole, that is going to merge with this area of low pressure to the north, bringing a wintry type storm to parts of Newfoundland and parts of Labrador as well. And that will happen as we head through the weekend. Now, Environment Canada does have a special weather statement out. There's a couple of areas to watch along the south coast at this point and eastern areas of the island. We're looking at a rain event and then some wintry precipitation expected through central and the northern peninsula, potential for some snow and some ice. I'll break the full forecast down coming up.
Well, the latest COVID data shows 9 deaths in the past week. That's the highest 7-day total since April. 7 of those people were over the age of 80, 2 were in their 70s, 6 were in the Western Health region, the rest were in the area covered by Eastern Health. As of yesterday, 18 people are in hospital due to the virus. That's double last week's number. 4 are in critical care. The Chief Medical Officer of Health has said the province should expect an increase in cases and hospitalizations as the weather cools and people spend more time indoors. Well, drivers are paying more for gasoline today. The price increased overnight by 5.3 cents a liter. The cost on the Avalon Peninsula is now close to $1.96, while the most expensive gas is in Labrador South at nearly $2.33 a liter. Diesel has dropped this morning by 8.5 cents a liter, and furnace oil is up by more than 2 cents. Well, police say they caught someone purchasing a vehicle using another person's identity. A 32-year-old man from St. John's has been charged with several offenses, including fraud over $5,000, forgery, and identity fraud. Police say they learned on Sunday that a man pretending to be someone else bought a vehicle in Alberta and then drove it here. The victim, the person he pretended to be, would be stuck footing the bill. 3 men were arrested the next day, and so far, 1 is charged and police are still investigating. Well, for the next 4 days, the largest craft fair in the province is taking over the Jack Byrne Arena in Torbay. And who better to get us in the holiday spirit than our very own Jeremy Eaton? He's in the thick of it tonight at the Craft Council's annual fair. So, Jeremy, how's it going down there so far?
Well, as you can see, there's a number of vendors and a number of shoppers here behind me. And as you said, this event will run for the next 4 days. It started today at noon, and when I showed up around 1:30 today, the place was blocked, and it's only going to get busier as the weekend goes on. But this is the Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador's 48th annual Christmas Craft Fair. So after 48 years, sometimes it's hard to find a little bit of a different storyline to tell, but earlier today I found 2 artisans who this is their first Christmas, hang on, I gotta look at my notes, Christmas craft fair. So take a look at this video.
I raise Angora rabbits and I spin the wool and I spin any natural fibers I can get my hands on. So what we have here is merino and mohair and silk. I spin it and then take it home and dye it in my kitchen in the nighttime. And then I put it on my wall to sell, and while I'm spinning I look at it and decide what I'm going to knit out of it next. I make one thing in particular that's particularly special to me, and it's called a snuggle bunny. Would you like to see it?
Obviously.
Okay. So this is a snuggle bunny, and this is a lap-sized blanket knit with lots of holes and ridges and lots of texture for you to stick your fingers into. It's trimmed with Angora from my bunnies. I knit natural stones into the edge, and that's sort of a textural element, but also there are lots of people who are comforted by whatever properties are inherent in the natural stones. Then I put a loop on the end. And the reason I put a loop on the end is because if you wanted to go somewhere that was a bit stressful and you wanted this sensory blanket, you can wear it like a scarf by pulling it through the loop. And there you are. Beautiful. I got my rabbits in 2017, and I didn't spin at that time. I'm a youth care worker, and so I got them as a therapy animal. However, one thing led to another, and my husband gave me a second-hand spinning wheel for my birthday after I got the rabbits, and I've been spinning ever since. This is my first time. Last year I did a demonstration with the spinning wheel, and that sort of gave me the courage that, perhaps I could do it, and so here I am.
It's an old art form, and it was carried out mostly by whalers back in the day when they were whaling, and that's where a lot of this, and it was black, it was all black then. But I've taken that same principle and engraved into this bone, and that's basically mounted it on necklaces or on rocks, and it all works, right?
Is that bone, all the stuff that you have here?
That is absolutely moose bone or moose antler. It's mounted on antler, and it's moose bone, this part here. There's a lot of work. I have to and sand, the whole works of that, right up to 2,500 grit. First year. I'm bringing all this out first year down here. I did a little bit last year, but yeah, this is first year.
So those are two of the artists and people who are here selling their wares at the Christmas Craft Fair. Now we're going to learn more about this fair when we speak to one of the organizers coming up later on in the show. Reporting live for Here Now, I'm Jeremy Eaton at the Jack Byrne Arena in Torbay.
Time for a look at the weather. And Ashley, you mentioned the storm that's coming earlier in this show. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, so basically it's the remnants of what was Hurricane Nicole, and we talked about that a little bit earlier this week. Let's take a look at what's going on at the moment. So there is the storm there over Florida. It did make landfall as a hurricane earlier this morning, but now Tropical Storm Nicole. It is going to basically transition to post-tropical as it makes its way across the states and then merges with this area of low pressure about to move into Ontario. There's lots of cold air associated with that on the north side of this system. So as those two things wrap up, it does look like we're going to see some significant weather from this storm, particularly as we head into Saturday and then through at least the first half of Sunday. So just taking a look at what's going on there is the future tracker. The remnants of Nicole heading towards this area of low pressure over Ontario. They will merge, and then as we get into the evening hours on Friday into Saturday, lots of heavy rain expected for the Maritime provinces, and then some snow up across portions of Labrador. This is when we'll start to see the effects as we head through the morning hours on Saturday, likely starting as rain though along the south coast, and then we start to talk about the potential for some freezing rain through the afternoon. Looks like the highest the highest elevations rather on the west coast through the interior will see that freezing rain. And then the northern peninsula should stay all as snow, and this will be the first significant snowfall it looks like for you. We could see in excess of 15 plus centimeters. Some areas may even see higher than that. And then heavy rain, the story for the south coast and eastern portions of the island as well. So we're talking potentially between 50 and 80 millimeters of rain with this system. Winds not overly impressive, likely going to see 60, maybe 70 kilometer per hour winds. Exposed areas may see a little bit higher than that, but that does mean we could see some blowing snow up across portions of the northern peninsula. So definitely if you have any travel plans on Saturday, definitely going to want to keep an eye on the forecast. That will move through fairly quickly. In behind that, some colder air, which means the potential for some flurries, but overall, most of that should be said and done by the time we get into Sunday. So taking a closer look at what's happening right now, we do have some of that cooler air in place, especially up across Labrador, but overall between 6 and 7 and 8 degrees for parts of the island. At the moment, northern peninsula, you're into some of that colder air, so about -2 right now in St. Anthony, and then factor in that wind chill. It's feeling much colder out there, feeling more like 0 in St. John's, -7 in St. Anthony, up across Labrador. Generally, the north is where we're seeing the coolest temperatures, feeling 6 degrees right now, feeling more like -12 in Nain. Taking a look at satellite radar, some showers rolling through a little bit earlier for the eastern portion of the island. That will generally continue tonight with that potential for some showers, but overall flurries the story up across Labrador. A better chance of those showers or flurries, especially in the higher elevations for overnight tonight along the west coast, and then that will work its way further east as we get into the morning hours. So temperatures tonight staying between 0 and 6 for the most part. Northern Peninsula minus single digits, up across Labrador a bit cooler even still, -11 tonight. In Happy Valley, Goose Bay, winds are going to stay a bit more breezy though for the east as we head through the night tonight. Tomorrow, not really a whole lot to talk about, just some cloudy periods through the day. As we get into the evening hours and especially into the early morning hours is when on Saturday is when we'll start to see some of that weather move in as in the way of showers, but overall a quiet day for your Friday. Around 7 degrees in St. John's, slight chance of a few showers later on in the afternoon, but overall temperatures in the single digits. And then for the Big Land, your temperatures will sit in the minus single digits through the day. Chance of flurries for you in the west, but not till later on in the day. And we'll get into the long range forecast when I come back.
Well, the weekend is almost here, and that means a brand new Land and Sea is coming up on Sunday. Host Jane Ady joins me now with a preview. So what can we expect?
Well, Carolyn, this week we're going to meet a woman named Nancy Churchill, who's living a pretty interesting lifestyle in a small cabin in Port Brexton. She raises all her own animals and vegetables, and she's doing all of this without electricity. So she lives off-grid. So it's an interesting look at someone who is living a pretty challenging lifestyle in the woods.
That sounds very interesting. How did you find out about her?
Well, like so many Land and Sea stories, I got a call from one of her friends who said, look, I think I know a woman who might be an interesting Land and Sea. She's got this lifestyle in the woods. She does everything herself, raises animals and vegetables. So we get a lot of great story ideas that way. People know the content of our show really well. So we often get calls from people who say, I think I got a great character for you. So this is how this one came about.
And what did you find the most interesting about her unique lifestyle?
Well, I don't know about you, Carolyn, but I love to camp for a couple of days, but I also love to get back to my house and the modern conveniences that I have. But I think what I was most impressed with was this woman is doing everything on her own. As I said, she raises animals. She also slaughters these animals herself because she sells them as food or as pets. And she also eats the meat that she raises. So I found that to be pretty impressive. You know, these are all skills that she learned as a young woman. She grew up on a dairy farm. Her father had a slaughterhouse. So these are all things that I don't do. So I was pretty impressed with the lifestyle. Like I said, I don't think I could live without electricity, but she says, yeah, it's like camping, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
And I know land and sea shoots can be challenging at times when it comes to weather and time crunches and logistics, but did you face any challenges with this particular shoot?
No, this was a pretty smooth shoot, but Daryl Murphy, who's actually shooting for us right now, was the cameraman, and he could tell you that one of the interviews we did with Nancy was inside the goat pen. And while we were doing the interview, the goats were going everywhere. They were jumping up on her, they were chewing her hair, they jumped up at me at one point. So it was a lot of fun, but I have to say after that we learned that we should do the interviews outside the goat pen.
Sounds like it's going to be an excellent episode. When can people watch?
All right, so this episode is called Offbeat and Off Grid, and people can watch on Sunday at 11:30. That's 11 o'clock in Labrador.
Great, Jane 80, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Is the Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry insisting that we continue our show, even in the face of moral danger?
That show is the true story of a comedy troupe that was entertaining soldiers during the First World War. There's a new stage production that tells that very story. We'll hear about it coming up. Well, did you know that there were comedy troupes in the trenches during the First World War entertaining the troops, the soldiers? Well, here at the Arts and Culture Center in the Barbara Barrett Theatre, there's a stage production underway that tells the story of the very first comedy troupe during the First World War. And joining me now is the director, Louise Kirley. So Louise, can you tell us about the story behind this play?
It's a Canadian play written by Neil Graham in Edmonton, written in 2018. We're only the second company, as far as I know, to have ever produced it. But we were looking for a Remembrance Day piece. Every few years we like to do a Remembrance Day piece. And I found this one. And it's really unique. It has a really unique approach to World War I. And it's a true story. So apparently the Princess Patricias were over in France, and they were getting beat very badly, and thousands were dying, and the morale of the men were really low. So they had this officer there, and he had a man in his troop who was always getting into trouble for cracking jokes and getting, you know, pranks and things. So I pulled him in and said, okay, you're a jokester. I want you to find 3 or 4 other men, and I want you in 2 weeks to do a comedy show for the men because they need the morale boosted. Wow. So that's the first time we ever get this idea of entertainment for the troops.
What do you like most about the show?
I think that's what I like about it. There's a lot of stuff in this show. There's the challenge to create the tragedy of the event and the death, and then to lighten that with the comedy. And then there's also other elements in. Neil Graham is a documentary filmmaker, so there's a huge number of slides and information that come up during the show as well on what happened during World War I.
Tell us about the character you play in the show.
I play Jack McLaren, who is the clown who is ordered to come up with this troupe. And so it is my job to find 4 or so other actors to kind of put on a light-hearted comedy review to boost the morale of the other men.
Mm-hmm. What's it like being in this show?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, I got my debut as a performer back in 2017 with Rising Tide's No Man's Land. So World War I isn't, it's not foreign to me, but it is nice to have this new, fresh light on kind of how that transpired and being a part of something a little bit more lighthearted and less depressing.
Can you tell us about the set that we're seeing here behind you? Explain what's going on here.
Well, the primary set is based on a classic World War I trench. Soldiers would hide in the trench. They would be forced to lay low until it was their time to go over the top, and then the battle would begin. Half of our set is spent in the trench. However, we also have a piano that we bring out, and then that kind of divides the stage and brings us backstage and as well as on stage so that we can actually give off the comedy company's performance.
Have you given it any thought yourself about what it would have been like had you been alive at that time and sent over there to fight in the war?
I would have been enlisted, there's no doubt about it, and it's a horrifying thing to think about. And the fact that I get to pay my tribute the way that I do by performing on stage, it's not a lot, but if that's what I can do to do my part, then I'll do it time and time again.
It's an interesting combination because it's a mix of comedy and tragedy. So there are some scenes with the realities of war, and then interspersed with that, then you'll see the men trying to create this comedy troupe. And then they're back in the line, right, fighting the Germans, and then they're back outside, you know, trying to create this show for the men.
So there's a show this evening at the Arts and Culture Center. This is the Barbara Barrett Theatre. But there's also a show tomorrow. So I guess anyone who's looking to find a way to mark Remembrance Day, maybe go to a ceremony, but this seems like it could be a nice thing for people to do.
I think it is. It's a way to remember, and it's a different way to remember, but it brings you back and reminds you of what the men went through. Yeah.
Well, good luck with it. Thank you so much for telling me about it, Louise.
No problem.
And another performance will be happening tomorrow in honor of Remembrance Day. A different kind of war story will be told at the Basilica in St. John's. The 18 is part play, part musical, featuring performers like Patrina Bromley and the Ennis Sisters. And the story may be familiar to CBC audiences. It's about a group of school children in London and an act of kindness they showed to fallen soldiers from this province.
Far across the broad Atlantic, In the south of London town, school children gathered chestnuts from the cemetery ground.
Mates, not now. We're in church.
This is about a group of kids who have discovered the 18 graves of wonderful people who served for us many, many years ago. And they have decided to clean them up because nobody's taking care of them.
We counted 18. Who were these people?
And why did they have big reindeers on their stones? Were they St. Nicholas's elves or something?
Hi, my name is Kelly Walsh, and I'm one of the partners producing the show The 18. So the story is about these young people from Beatrix Potter Primary School in London, and how they happened upon a graveyard that had headstones that were not cared for. And so they found out that these were actually 17 soldiers and 1 nurse, Newfoundlanders, who were laid to rest after World War I.
Miss Bartlett, some soldiers get a whole song about where they're buried. Can the 18 have something as beautiful as that?
That would be beautiful, wouldn't it?
Have the families forgotten about them?
Oh no, my ducky. Their parents worried and prayed every day for their child's safe return.
Couldn't they just text each other?
Hi, my name is Patrina Bromley, and I am playing Bertha Bartlett in The 18. We do know she's from Brigus originally, and signed up to the Volunteer Aid Detachment to go over and be a nurse for the troops. It's a sudden blast of color into those old black and white photos. Let's look for that color in the simple things. It's right there, in our backyard. Maybe it just took children to make us pay attention.
I think a bit differently now because now I know so many stories and know why we wear poppies.
It feels really good. It feels like I get to take a little bit of that story with us every day.
So this incredible story is being told through song, through text, through dance. This beautiful show is on November the 11th here at the Basilica. It's at 2 o'clock. Admission is free because we want this to be open and accessible for anyone who wants to come and share in this act of remembrance together.
Well, Remembrance Day is also an important fundraiser, with people donating to the Poppy campaign in support of the Royal Canadian Legion and veterans. We spoke with the local president of the Legion to hear about events planned for tomorrow and how he hopes people will mark the day.
Tomorrow is a busy day, of course, and of course it's all throughout Newfoundland with different war memorials throughout our province. You know, the Legion makes representation there. St. John's is a little bit different. It's a busy day for all of us. I know myself. We start off tomorrow morning, really, at 8:30 at the Field of Honour. And then we usually go to the Sergeant Memorial for service around 10 a.m. And then, of course, we end up after that to the National War Memorial for the 11 o'clock services. I think people are going to pay their respects. You know, they're going to be there to honour our fallen veterans and of course the veterans of today and active servicemen, and I think we're going to have a large turnout, I really do. I really think it's a time of reflection, eh? You know, you kind of visualize and think about the experiences of the people went through in, you know, especially in World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and other wars in between. That and what the soldiers, the men and women, did for the province and for the nation. That to preserve the peace that we enjoy today. So it's be a personal reflection, and you're also going to have those who reflect on relatives that were lost, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, and what have you. So it'll be a memorable time. People will feel in their heart, and they'll want to pay their respects. And we certainly want to thank the general public for for the support that they have shown the Poppy campaign. But we are encouraged. It's on par as in former years, and we're looking for a successful campaign.
I'm Adam Walsh. Tune into CBC Radio 1 on Friday, November the 11th at 10:50 Newfoundland time for special Remembrance Day coverage from here at the National War Memorial. Then at 11:30 Newfoundland time, it's a special crosstalk. This year we'll be talking about letters from war, and we're asking you, how are you remembering this year? That's Friday on Crosstalk.
Well, let's check back with Jeremy, who's in Torbay at the Craft Council's Christmas Craft Fair. Jeremy.
Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, it's the 48th annual of the Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador's Christmas Craft Fair. That is quite a mouthful, but to explain more about it is the Executive Director, Rowena House. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So, gotta ask, 48th year, this gotta be one of the longest running in the province.
It is the longest running in the province, and it's the only juried show in the province as well. So that's a little bit of a process to get into the fair, but it's definitely worth it in the end.
Now, how many, there's a number of vendors that our viewers can see behind us, but how many are set up here this weekend?
We have 80 vendors set up here the weekend, and we're seeing 17 new vendors this week as well.
Does that surprise you that after 48 years you got 17 new vendors here?
No, we're so glad to have some new blood in the arena kind of deal, and we're just thankful that they see the value of putting in the extra effort to make it into the juried fair.
Now, it's not just people from, the Avalon Peninsula. No. Where are you seeing the vendors come from?
They're from all over the island. We have Chad Keane is here from Corner Brook. We have people here from Central. We have people here from Darktickle is here from the Northern Peninsula. Jabba Jacks is here from Rocky Harbour. So there's a little bit of everywhere across the province, including Nunatsiavut is here from Nain, Hopedale, and Makkovik.
So what are the hours? If people wanted to stop by and take in what's here behind us, what are the hours?
So we're 12 to 7 today, and 12 to 7 tomorrow, and 10 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday.
And how many people are you expecting this weekend?
I'm hoping for 8,000. We want to kind of get our numbers up from where we were in pre-COVID and COVID numbers. So we're looking for about 8,000 people to come through.
Now I know Lee Pitts, our producers, tell me to wrap it up. I got one more quick question because we were talking about it earlier. What sort of economic impact does this have on these vendors?
Oh, this is one of their major events that they do all year. Economic impact for the whole fair for all vendors is about $550,000.
That's incredible. Well, Rowena, thanks so much for telling us all about it.
Thank you for having me on the show, and thanks for coming to the fair.
Not a problem. Reporting live from the Jackburn Arena in Torbay, I'm Jeremy Eaton.
Returning now to one of our top stories, the MP for Labrador, Yvonne Jones, is taking a step back temporarily. Jones announced today that she's been diagnosed with breast cancer for the second time. She spoke this afternoon to David Cochran, who's hosting CBC News Network's Power and Politics.
With any illness that I guess you have to deal with in your life, there's always a certain amount of anxiety. But I have a tremendous support base around me, and I'm feeling very strong and confident going into this.
What can you tell us, or what are you willing to tell us? Because this is your personal health information. What can you tell us about your prognosis and the road ahead for you as you deal with this?
My prognosis is very good, and I want to say how grateful I am for that. I feel incredibly blessed, simply because I do regular mammography screening. It's a priority for me, and because of that, there was early detection, as it was in my previous bout with breast cancer. And because of that early detection, I know that I can fight this, and with treatment and surgery, I will do fine at the end.
I just wonder what went through your mind when you were told it's back again 10 years later.
Well, tremendous amount of anxiety, that's for sure. I think in my first diagnosis, I didn't know what to expect, and it was a journey that was really revealing for me. This time around, I've been down that road. I know more of what to expect. I understand it more. I've learned a lot. But with that also comes a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety in knowing what's coming up next. So back in 2010, obviously, because of the amount of chemotherapy, it took me much longer to recover and for my immune system to bounce back to good health. This time around, we'll see how things go after the surgical procedures and where that journey is going to take me this time around.
Do you have a sense of how long you might be out of commission and how long you might need to step away to focus on your health?
Well, people who know me know that I'm going to take as little time as I possibly can, but at the same time, I am making myself a priority when it comes to this journey to good health right now, which means I will need to take leave for at least a couple of months, and then we'll assess where we are at that time. This time around, we have hybrid parliament. I have the ability to be able to contribute on behalf of my constituents through the mediums that are available and still participate. So that's something that wasn't there 10 years ago when I was battling cancer.
I wonder, Ms. Jones, what about your constituency work, and if people need their MP in Labrador while you're off, is it your office? Are the other MPs from Newfoundland and Labrador stepping in? How's that going to be handled?
So what we've been able to do is I have very competent staff. Some have been with me more than 25 years in my political office. They're very experienced. They're more than capable of handling the day-to-day inquiries that happens through a constituency office. And the Newfoundland and Labrador MPs, my caucus colleagues, both provincially and nationally, have certainly been tremendous support to me. But most importantly, my colleagues in Newfoundland and Labrador are really going to help out, help share some of that load, and make sure that Labrador has the prevalence that it needs over the next couple of months in the floor of the House of Commons, but also within the government.
You know, when you have these moments in life, you often reflect on where you are and what you want to do. And I know you've got to focus on the short term to get the treatment and the recovery. An election could be in 2024, 2025. Do you give any thought to your political future? Do you tend to stay on and run again? Or am I being completely premature and inappropriate with that question?
No, David, not at all. I'd be disappointed if you didn't pose that question to me. But you know me very well, and you know I'm not going anywhere yet. This is a bump in the road. I've had many challenges in my life and in my political career. This is just one more challenge. There are men and women across our country every day who battle cancer, who battle tremendous sickness and illness, who rise up at the end of the day and continue to live a very full life. I intend to do just that, and I have every intention of running in the next election. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me. I got some bumps in the road I got to smooth out here. I got to look after myself so I can look after all those people that I represent, and I intend to do that and make a full recovery as soon as possible.
All right, well, Ms. Jones, you beat cancer once. Let's hope you can do it again. Thanks so much for joining us today and talking about this.
And thank you, David.
Well, Canada's chief public health officer says the country is facing a triple threat of illnesses this winter. Dr. Theresa Tam says COVID-19 cases are on the rise and 2 other respiratory diseases are showing up earlier than usual.
Respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, and influenza have increased above seasonal levels as respiratory virus season gets underway early in Canada.
Tam says the combination of 3 respiratory illnesses is already driving a surge in hospitalizations. She says children's hospitals are being particularly hit hard by RSV, and more than half of all influenza cases have been detected in children and teens. Tam is urging Canadians to take precautions such as wearing masks indoors and keeping COVID-19 and flu vaccinations up to date. Tomorrow on CBC Radio, it's a province-wide morning show. You'll hear from a Corner Brook woman who's recycling old Christmas cards into ornaments for deployed Canadian Forces members. And we'll hear from the Gander 9 Wing Command about how current members mark the day.
She lives in the woods by herself and raises all kinds of animals without electricity.
I like a challenge.
Sunday at 11:30 and Monday at 7.
Well, people planning to attend Remembrance Day ceremonies outdoors tomorrow are probably curious about how the weather is looking. So how is tomorrow looking?
Yeah, the forecast looking pretty decent for a good chunk of the province. Let's take a look at those numbers. Temperature-wise, we're looking in the single digits, between 3 and 6 degrees across the island. A slight chance we'll see a few showers at that time around 11 o'clock or at least late morning, let's say that, for central and west coast. And then up across Labrador, generally sunshine, but chilly. Temperatures only in about -10 in Lab City and about -6 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. The good news is it's not overly windy, so the temperatures won't feel all that bad. But that is tomorrow's forecast. But as we look ahead to Saturday, that's when things are really going to change. Showed you this a little bit earlier, but we'll talk about it one more time as we start to see the remnants of Tropical Storm Nicole. At this point, it'll just be a fall storm that will move in, and looking like we'll see some snowfall for parts of the northern peninsula. It'll likely start as snow for central and parts of the interior, and then it'll transition through to ice pellets, potentially some freezing rain, and then eventually rain as that system continues to track. Now, it will be very highly dependent on where the storm actually tracks, and that's the storm, or that's the what happens always when we talk about these storms. But at this point, South Coast, Eastern Newfoundland will stay in the rain. Temperatures will be very mild, back up into the teens, between 13 and 15 degrees. But there you go. There's that swath of potential for some freezing rain where your temperature's really only hovering between 0 and 2 degrees through the day. But again, that northern peninsula is where we'll see the majority of the snow. This is just one model's interpretation of what will happen, but showing some accumulations potentially between 15 or even 20 plus centimeters of snow. Some of this may start as rain, but again, going to keep an eye on that forecast because this likely will be the first significant snowfall for a good chunk of the island. Or a good chunk of the northern peninsula, rather. As far as freezing rain potential, highest elevations looks like where we'll see the most of it. But we could see some power outages with this as well if we do see some of that significant freezing rain, but we'll iron that out as we head through the day tomorrow. Now, taking a look at the long range forecast, we'll get back into the cooler temperatures on Sunday. Monday back up again, so definitely a roller coaster. We're looking at those temperatures much cooler though for central and western Newfoundland as you hover into the single digits and maybe even a little bit below, and then well below 0. The story for eastern Labrador with some snow in the forecast in the west. Take a look at this shot. Beautiful. This is the Silver Mine section of the East Coast Trail. And Pete shared that great shot with us. And if you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca. Email them there, Twitter or Facebook page.
Oh, wow, that is just gorgeous.
Yep, sun's rising.
Pete.
Great shot there. Thanks, Pete.
Well, that's it for us this evening. Thank you so much for sharing part of your night with us, and hope you can join us tomorrow for our Remembrance Day show.
That's right. Good night.